What if the biggest barrier to your next level isn't your skill? It's whether you can see yourself there. I'm Dr. Natalie Luke, and this is the UnCeiling You podcast. It's the podcast where we explore how to reset under pressure, lead from our highest self, and make a quantum leap without burning out or proving that you have to belong. Here's what I've learned in my decades of STEM leadership. You can't get to the next level unless people see you there, and people won't see you there if you don't see yourself there first. This week, I'm talking a lot about the hidden work we do as leaders. That's the second job nobody puts in the job description. Managing everyone's emotional reactions, being the steady point when others spiral, and absorbing stress so work can continue. If you're excellent at staying calm under pressure, let me rephrase that. If you're excellent at looking like you're staying calm under pressure, but you're exhausted from being everyone's shock absorber, this conversation's for you. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Candace Steele Flippin, who's done groundbreaking research on generational communication, career self-efficacy, and how ambitious women can bet on themselves without burning out. We're talking about Gen Z's hunger for fast growth, millennial women carrying the weight of doing it all, and the one thing that's most correlated with career success that most of us struggle with. So let's dive in. We're just going to jump right into it. Let's talk a little bit about your research. Your research shows that Gen Zs want fast growth, meaningful work, and so do so many people that are high potentials at all levels. Could you help us understand who the Gen Z population is, and also talk about how speed often leads to burnout? Like, how can ambitious leaders, high potential leaders, pace themselves without losing momentum?
Sure. So, hey, Natalie, always good to talk to you. So let's start with Gen Z. So Gen Z, they were born after 2006. They are among the emerging workers in the workforce. Many of them are in their mid, close to late 20s, believe it or not, by now. And what's interesting about Gen Z, at least in my research, is that, they came of age, and generation theory just tells us when and where you were born, what was happening where you live, shapes what's important to you, what your values are. So if we think about Gen Z coming of age, fully digital natives, a lot of intuitive devices, and just how they interact with the world with social media, they don't have to wait for things the way, let's say, a Gen Xer like me had to. So what I've found is that people complain that they're moving too fast when actually they're just keeping pace with the world that they were born into. And a great example I like to use is just expectation. So let's go back to when I was coming of age. I had to wait for things. We had faxes, and back when I was there, the fax was a special thermal paper, and you had to wait for things. TV went off when I was coming up. Things just took a different pace. Well, now so many things are instant, even knowledge. I had to go look it up. Now I can just ask a device and it'll tell me. And so when I play games, if I lost, and I had to wait till next season or whatever the case may be. But now we have games that if you win the first time, you move up to the next level, or if it takes you 5 times or 10 times, mastery, just to do it once, and then you move to the next level. And it's laid out there for you. And so if you think about that experience, you bring it to the workplace. And so what a lot of Gen Zs say to me is, I've demonstrated that I can do X thing. Why do I have to keep doing it over and over and over again to demonstrate that I have mastery to go to the next level? And that's the disconnect. They're not moving quickly. They feel that they've demonstrated they can do it. Now let's go on to the next. And that's really what I see Gen Z just wanting to do. They've demonstrated it. They want to move on. But those of us who've had to demonstrate mastery sustained over time have a different expectation.
That is super interesting. And so when they are having to do things over and over, it's kind of like being on a hamster wheel and they're busy, but they're not moving forward rather than shifting to the water wheel, as you've described, where your work creates momentum and energy. How can we as leaders help these folks feel like they are doing something that makes a difference?
Well, many leaders are by setting the expectation up front. What tends not to happen is the expectation for advancement. And so when you don't provide that communication, you have a gap and misaligned expectations. And so that's the first thing I believe leaders should do: communicate the expectations up front and often so that people know what to expect. And that will cut through disappointment, that will cut through surprise, and it will open the door for a really robust conversation.
Yeah, I can definitely see that and relate to that even as I work with my daughter who is this population. And I know that things come to her really fast. And so I can already see, even as a mom, how I might have to help with that expectation. So millennials, let's move to millennials and maybe describe who the millennials are. And they're now in middle management carrying enormous responsibility. I would describe it as you're like the filling in an Oreo cookie. You got pressure from your staff and you have pressure from your higher ups and you're having to manage both sides. It's huge. What are the biggest stressors facing millennial women as they lead multi-generational teams?
So there are two things. I'm going to start with what I found early on in my research, which surprised me. It's usually not the job, because if you're moving up, like you've demonstrated the emotional intelligence, you've figured out the culture and you're moving and you're ambitious and you're ticking all your boxes. What I find for millennial women is the life stage effect of doing it all and managing your family expectations, whether you have a partner or not. These pressures of maximizing your personal life along with your work life. Sometimes many millennials, they've moved, they're in their 40s, they're close to 50. And they're thinking about, you know, a lot of life stage things, like either they've started their family or their kids are moving through elementary, getting ready for high school, all those things. And how do you manage that with work? And that's the biggest stressor I see for a lot of millennial women. They want to have strong families. They want to be great partners. They want to be good parents. They want to be, good sons and daughters. And they want all those things, but how do you make it work? Because when they look to some of their role models, the baby boomer women and even some of the Gen X women, it was a different expectation. Certainly we want to have great families, but where they leaned in or where we leaned in was a lot different. And so that's the first stress, or that personal stress of making it work. And then as it relates to the different generations, I would say that managing them, for the most part, I find them doing a pretty good job from a multi-generational workplace, because the high empathy factor that really has played out because of all the great work on mental health, so they can appreciate it. That's where I see a lot of really good stress management. But at the same time, there's this values alignment and trying to have a more holistic view of leadership. And that's where I see a lot of millennial women struggling, not insurmountably, but when it comes to a multi-generational workplace, creating a path where there's more mobility and options than maybe they had. For example, oftentimes in my research, Natalie, millennials would say to me, "Why do Gen X and baby boomers haze us?" And I would say, "Well, what do you mean?" And they would talk about the feasibility of some of the impossible tasks and decisions that they knew that baby boomers and Gen X didn't appreciate. The long hours, maybe unnecessarily, just sometimes what they view as inefficiencies or lack of policies that promote having a strong family unit or personal boundaries, psychological safety. And we knew it, but we kind of wore it as a badge of honor. And they say, You knew that you didn't really have to walk through fire, but you did it. And instead of turning back and saying, walk around, call the fire department, stop, drop, and roll, you all want to drag us through the fire. And that's what I see them struggling with, like the value system alignment, where sometimes they feel that we haven't made conditions better for them. And they may not want to lead that way. May want to lead in a more humanistic way from their perspective. And it's a different conversation, particularly now when the pendulum is kind of swinging with employment issues, right? But at the same time, that value system misalignment is very real.
Hmm. I remember when I was moving up within the organization and working with women that were older than me. And I wanted to say to them, just because you ate oatmeal every morning for breakfast doesn't mean I have to. And so I'm wondering if that's what you mean by, hey, we know you had to have these problems. Why are you taking that same problem and pushing it on us?
Oh, yeah. I remember earlier in my career, Gen X here, best generation, even though we're like the Jan Brady of generational discussion. We're here, we do stuff. So some of the millennial workers, female, they wanted a different and a better maternity leave. This was early on in my career. And so there were two executive women who were baby boomers. They were moms. They made it happen. And so I said, well, I'll carry the torch and put the proposal. Certainly there'll be advocacy. And it was a non-starter. They were like, what are you talking about? I have X many kids and I made it work. Like, what is, they were offended that I would even ask that a accommodation would be made or we would change the policy. So it was like, look, you guys get 8 weeks now. Like I only had whatever it was less. But it was just really interesting to me that it was inconceivable. And it points to research that shows that if you want to get empathy from someone, you don't want to go to someone who struggled as much because they say, well, I got through it. How hard can it be? You want to go to someone who maybe wasn't in the struggle because they tend to be more empathetic, thinking about possibilities. Yeah. People who've done things and they succeeded, they tend to be less empathetic, which is interesting. You would think would be the other way.
Exactly.
So what these millennial women wanted me to try to understand is that badge that so many of us have carried gets in the way of us reaching back and making things better sometimes for those who are following us.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we brought that example out because if there's a listener that's listening and suffering from that, now they have a little bit of a better understanding of what might be happening. In that particular situation where you brought the conversation was a non-starter in terms of getting maternity leave, what did you do? Or if someone's running into that same problem, what would you recommend?
So in that case, we had someone else carry the message and it was a male. So we thought we would go to or at least I did back then, thought I'd go to what I thought would be the least path of resistance, someone who had to do that. But instead, we went to a male leader and explained the case and talked about the same argument, the same benefit to the organization. But he was more receptive to it because, he thought about maybe observing his wife who worked outside the home, his daughter who worked outside the home and had a different point of view. Now, I'm sure that there are lots of women who are baby boomers who carried that torch and made things better. But in that example, it just shows how sometimes these younger cohorts are looking to us to set an example and to model a better situation for them as a leader that sometimes they're not experiencing because we survived it and thrived in our mind.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Kudos to you. And I think that's that I'm glad that we brought that out. Now, speaking of models, you have the shape model. I watched your
Yes.
YouTube video. It was fantastic. And I love
Thank
the way
you.
you said, get in shape. Can you talk a little bit about the model and what does the A stand for? And also talk about why is it so hard for people to do that A?
Yeah. So shape is about how you can boost your self-efficacy and bet on yourself and your career. So self-efficacy is just your belief that if you try something, it's going to work out. And so I short form it like your ability to bet on yourself. Here's an example just to ground those who are listening or watching. Have you ever wanted to do something, Natalie? It doesn't matter what it is, and you told someone, and they're like, you can't do that, or gave you reasons, maybe from the past, or why it wouldn't work out, but you went and did it anyway. That's an example of your self-efficacy being high, your belief based on whatever has happened in the past, that you're going to try this thing. It's going to work out. Anything from a career pursuit or a business pursuit or even something like baking a cake or a hobby, like something in you believes that no matter what, you can bet on yourself and it's going to work out. I like to say confidence, which is your belief in yourself, will get you to the door, but it's your level of self-efficacy that's going to allow you to walk through that door. And so this model or this framework is all about 5 things you can do to help you bet on yourself. And one has to do with your financial foundation, because a lot of people don't realize by not having a strong financial foundation, I call it SAVE, dictates how much of a risk you'll take on yourself, particularly if you're female, because a lot of females are the primary breadwinner in their household or a significant contributor. So they're not going to take a risk. So you want to get your finances in shape. The H has to do with hard work. And it's not about not doing your best, because I would never say that to anyone. And ambitious people are going to work hard. But it's around that alignment. Like, some people say, are you working smart? But are you aligned with the people or person who's evaluating you? So you're putting in the right amount of effort based on what's expected of you so that the rewards on the other end can be realized. A is about advocating for yourself effectively, using your voice. And in the studies, it is the most highly correlated factor to career self-efficacy. And it covers everything from being able to negotiate for time, resources, compensation, to being able to make sure that you're not silencing yourself. Because sometimes women, we make ourselves small to accommodate other people. So really being comfortable with negotiating in a work or professional context. Now, some women have said to me, Dr. Candace, I can negotiate a sale, or like I love negotiating, but somehow when it comes to work, it just gets harder. So making sure that you're not silencing yourself in those moments and coming up with other techniques to bring other people to support you. An example, Natalie, is what I could call the idea vampire. Tell me if you've had this scenario. You go into a meeting and you say, let's say the meeting is about arithmetic, and you say 1 + 1 = 2, and there's silence. But then some other person says, hey, everybody, 1 + 1 = 2, and they turn to the other person, like, oh, other person, that's brilliant. And you're sitting there thinking, like, what, didn't I just say that? So it's like learning techniques where maybe we're going into the meeting, Natalie, and I say, okay, Natalie, next Thursday, we're going to be talking about arithmetic. And I read this article that 1 + 1 = 2. Here's the article. What do you think? And you're like, yeah, this is insightful. And I'm like, listen, when I drop this knowledge in the meeting, will you back me up? So I've set up a condition where the idea vampire can't strike. So I say it, then you immediately chime up. Oh my gosh, Candace, that is great. I also saw that article. Or if that person slides in quickly, you can like, yes, person X, Candace and I were just talking about that. And in fact, I'm glad you agree with her because and all the reasons. So just learning how to use your voice effectively and techniques and all of those things. P is about perseverance, and that's having really good coping mechanisms 2 ways. One, to help you survive those tough times. We're all going to have them, right? The key is how do you move through it effectively and as quickly as you need to. And it's also about knowing when to leave and keep yourself out of harm's way. Because sometimes ambitious people, we think that we got it, right? Just put in more effort, grind, and we damage our self-efficacy because we've kept ourselves in a hostile situation or unproductive situation. So you look up and you say, oh my gosh, 10 years have gone by or 5 years have gone by. This is all I know. No one will fill in the blank. And so it's about having really good support systems and coping mechanisms that like, for example, for some reason when I'm stressed, I live in Atlanta and there's this great bakery called Piece of Cake, and they have really delicious cakes and you can buy them by the slice. And if I notice that I'm having to eat cake like twice a week, I'm like, oh, I must be stressed. This is sick. No, this is not reward cake. This is stress cake. So just understanding the cues. so that you can move through it successfully. And the final one is E, and that's around education. And it has two aspects of it. It's one, self-awareness. So getting insights, whether through a formal assessment or people you trust about your blind spots.
Mhm.
And then the other part is just keep learning things. It doesn't matter what it is, so that when you see something new, your brain doesn't register new as bad.
Right.
It's like, you lean into your curiosity. So if you get tapped for something, instead of saying, well, so here's an example of your self-efficacy holding you back. Natalie, you are so great at X. I want you to go after Y promotion. Here's the job spec. And you read through the job spec. You're like, oh, Candace, they want 5 years of experience. I only have 4 years, 360 days. So close. Or I just got this promotion. I've been doing it for 3 years. I feel like I need at least 1 or 2 more years doing this exact same job, as opposed to taking this before I feel comfortable, even though you and everyone else says I'm ready. So that's an example. So, but if you keep learning things and you stay curious, it doesn't matter what it is. If someone gives you something new, your brain leads into curiosity, because you're like, well, I did that. I could surely do this. And
Yes.
that's what they fortify your self-efficacy. So that's what it is. And I call it Get Your Career in Shape, because I wanted people to think about it in a positive way, right? If it's a new year, career's front and center, you're ambitious. Here are 5 things you can do that you can do yourself, because I can't do anything about bias or any kind of isms, but I can think about my financial situation. I can work to get aligned with the person evaluating me and those influencing them. I can learn techniques to use my voice effectively and not silence myself. I can have
Right.
good coping mechanisms and watch the cues, and I can keep learning and learn about my blind spots and do something about it to get the career that I need, I want, and I deserve.
Yeah. I love that you put that model together. I think it pretty much crystallizes some of the things that we need to do. And I understand that it can be difficult to advocate for yourself in different situations. And you gave an excellent example of how you can have other people help advocate for you. So I really appreciate that. All of your studies, you look at how different generations think, work, and communicate. How do you think these differences can actually help reduce burnout and increase clarity for women trying to lead overall?
So let's look at the science. And I did a study of 1,400 women, and it was based on the work of a scholar out of the UK. And he looked at interpersonal communication. There are 12 aspects he explored. And interpersonal communication is just the way you exchange information and ideas, both verbally, like me talking to you, or non-verbally. So you're shaking your head, and that's signaling to me, yep, I understand. I'm on pace. I got it. And so I looked at the 12, and my thought was I'd find one as a proxy for each generation, and then I would train leaders on these 4 styles by generation. It turns out there were 3 that were statistically significant by generation. So the first is listening, and that was aligned with baby boomers. And when you think about listening and command and control type leadership styles, that's making sure that when someone's talking to you or you're talking to them, you're present. You're not like on your device or doing something else, like you're fully engaged. You can paraphrase back what they've said to show that you understood. You're not interrupting. The other one for Gen X, I'm just going to plug my generation because no one else does. But we are very good on leading small teams and collaborating. So all the things that you think about, everything from informing people, getting everyone's point of view, rewards, recognition, feedback, all of those things. We're really good at that. And that's because when we came into the workplace, work was distributed across different geographic was more geographically dispersed. So think about, you had technology to support that, working across borders. And so collaboration skills were really important from a communications perspective. And then for millennial and Gen Z, it's empathy. And it's really appreciating someone's perspective and point of view is valuable to them, even if it differs from your own. And we know a lot of Brene Brown's work around the power of empathy. And so let's talk about those 3 communication techniques: working on your listening skills, your collaboration skills, and your empathy skills to keep you from burning out. So if you're listening, then you are locked in on the expectation. If you are collaborating, then you're not overworking, you're delegating responsibly, you're looking at the boundaries that you can set for yourself and ensuring that accountability. And if you can bring in empathy, you're thinking about that human factor and the impact on people. So remember I talked about the hazing earlier, like looking at this humanistic. So I feel as though if we can work on our listening skills and our ability to collaborate and work together and think about other people's perspective as valid, even if it's not your own, then if you're working on a project or there's some major event that's happening, you would have had a dialogue about it. You would have thought about all the things that need to happen to make it work and the impact it will have on people. That's a great way to think about setting up a system from generational communication to avoid burnout.
Is there anything else that you want to add to all of this that really helps a person just really hone in on the thing that lights them up with their work before we move into the rapid fire set questions?
Okay. All right. So I'm in a stage right now where almost every single day I talk to people about where they are in their careers and where they want to go and how they coach people in their careers. And here are the 3 questions I often ask people to ask themselves to make a determination of their next step. Do you have the career you need? Does your career or your role give you the time and compensation to do what you need to do to take care of yourself and those who are counting on you? Do you have the career you need? And if the answer is no, what can you do about it to get closer to that? Question number 2, do you have the career you want? Does your career or your role align your passion and your purpose? Is this something you want to do? Does it pay off that investment for your training or education? When you wake up every day or on Mondays, are you moving closer to that? Or are you pulling the covers up or hitting the button on the snooze alarm because you just can't get into that? Do you have the career that you want? And if you don't, what steps can you take to get closer to it? Do you have the career you deserve? And if you don't, what steps can you take to move you closer to achieving that? And so those are the places where I ask people to start because it gives you a chance to really answer other broader questions about where you're going. And the shape blueprint helps put you on the path to get closer to there if it's something that you're doing where you're holding yourself.
I love those 3 questions. And I am definitely going to put that into the social media with your name on it because you're the one who came up with those 3 questions. And if someone wanted to work with you or talk with you or get your books, where can they go?
So if you want my book, it's available online, Amazon. You can reach out to me on social media. The best 2 are LinkedIn at Dr. Candace Steele Flippin, or you can reach out on our website, Global Career Advancement Institute. The short form is Global C Career A Advancement I, so globalcai.com, and we'd love to talk. We'd love to you.
Excellent. We'll have all of the links in the notes. So people, you don't have to write it down. It'll be in the notes. So the next part is where we talk about punchy, actionable questions that really end up being super interesting. Here's the first question. What's one behavior that instantly increased your influence at work?
I decided to show up for the job that I was headed towards rather than the one that I had. So I looked at my role models and I researched what their interests were, the things they did inside of work, outside of work, and then I started to put myself in that mindset. So I looked at what they were wearing and I upgraded my wardrobe. Maybe not at that time to the extent that their fashion budget had, but certainly to project that. I allowed myself to go into those rooms and to listen and to use my voice. And so that's something that I did. I saw myself there as opposed to just visualizing myself there, and I acted accordingly.
I think that is beautiful. Beautiful advice right there. Drop the mic. What's one generational myth you wish we would stop repeating?
That these generational values don't exist. And I've seen the pendulum swing from well-respected organizations, and I'm always going into the field. And so I did a study, several, and I asked the question, is it important that your manager understand generational values. And across the board, from baby boomer, Gen X, millennial, Gen Z, yes, it matters that they understand it. And when they understand it, it improves performance and communication. And the other question I ask, is it important for your manager to respect your generation? By and large, across the board, yes, 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 and yes. And so generation theory just says when and where you were born and what was happening where you live shape what's important to you. Yes, we know it's a bell curve. There are going to be outliers. But when people start saying that identity doesn't matter, I feel like it dilutes a big part of the human aspect of just wanting to be special and recognize that my life experience matters. And so for me, as a researcher and a person who works and talks about this, I wish people would stop saying it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And it's almost like saying, if it doesn't matter, it's almost like saying you don't matter. And yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to bring my best to an organization if I felt like I didn't matter to them at all.
It's not a very empathetic position.
Yeah.
And it
for
doesn't
sure.
lead into curiosity. So that's, if I could wave a magic wand, that's where I would point it.
Great. So what's one small daily habit that protects you?
The way I set my daily intention. So when I wake up every day, the first thing I do is I thank God for another day and I reset. So it doesn't matter what I did the day before, if it was great or if it didn't work out, I just reset my day. And I just say, you know what? Okay, here we go, another day, and it's going to be fine, no matter what's happening. Now, I'm an optimist, so that's a mixed bag, right? Always things think impossible, but I reset every day. Every day I reset.
Yeah. Well, it's my audience knows that I play tennis, and it's that reset happens like even moment by moment. You hit an excellent shot. If you spend time like replaying that excellent shot on the next point, you're going to miss it.
Right.
And the same with a bad shot too.
Yeah. I don't assume that yesterday is going to be exactly the same as tomorrow, but I reset. And I do a lot of resets. I do my daily reset. I do my monthly reset. I do my reset at my birthday. I do my annual. Like I just keep leaning into it, right? It's okay. Because I can control that, right?
Yeah.
I can control that.
Yeah. What's one career limiting behavior women should leave behind this year in 2026?
Putting their career in someone else's hands.
Ooh, say more.
I've had amazing sponsors and mentors, and I am grateful for them and continue to want them in my life forever. But what I see happening now is that so many people have these career promissory notes that they cannot cash, and it is rocking their world. And so what I would say is still get the mentor, still get the sponsor, but put your career in your own hands. It's a journey. The best trips are with someone by your side. But I would say build your own blueprint, build your own career blueprint.
Awesome. And so that is another reason for people to grab your book and to get a hold of you, because that is the one action that someone can take to put their career in their own hands.
That's right. Get your career in shape. It's a 5-step guide to achieve the success that you need, you want, and you deserve.
Great. Thank you so much for being on UnCeiling You. Really very great advice. Thank you so much for reaching out. I'm so happy to have you in my circle, and I hope my listeners reach out to you and so that you can be in their circle as well.
Thank you. I love that, Natalie. I appreciate you so much.
Dr. Candace dropped so much wisdom in this conversation. Her shape model, especially that A for advocacy, which is the most highly correlated factor for career self-efficacy, was mind-blowing. The 3 questions to ask yourself are these. Do you have the career you need, the career you want, and the career you deserve? And this one hit home for me. Stop putting your career in somebody else's hands. Get a mentor, get a sponsor, build your own blueprint. Here's what I want you to take away from this conversation and everything I've been sharing this week. You're probably doing 2 jobs right now. Your first job is your actual technical work. Your second is managing everyone else's emotional reaction to the work. And here's the truth. You can't get to your next level when you're using all your bandwidth just to manage the level you're already at. That's why I created the 3-minute reset framework, It's the same tool I use myself, and I teach to help you see what's yours to carry and what you can finally let others carry for themselves. There's 3 simple questions you can ask yourself before responding to next urgent request. What's the real priority here? What's mine to carry? And what can I let others carry on their own? 1 breath, 3 questions, 30 seconds. That's how you stop being everyone's shock absorber and start leading from your actual capacity, not your depleted one. Download it free at the website listed in the notes, because sustainable leadership isn't about carrying everything. It's about knowing what's yours to carry and what you can let people carry for themselves. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone else, another woman leader who needs to hear this. Leave a review and connect with me on LinkedIn. I post about reset, sustainable leadership, and identity level transformation every day, Monday through Saturday. Remember, reset, refresh, and move forward. I'm Dr. Natalie Luke, and this is UnCeiling You.